James Beardwell, welcome to the Personal Best podcast.
Thank you for having me.
How you doing?
Really good. Well, hot and sweaty from the tube ride, but really good other than that.
Understandable. So, for anyone that doesn't know you or they don't follow your social media, which they should, can you just give us a little intro into yourself? Where are you from? What do you do?
I consider myself a very normal kid from Essex. That's pretty much it. I'm 21. I am a fitness influencer, is what some people call it. Moving into lifestyle as well. I've always been pretty rounded with my social media, but a lot of people call me a fitness influencer. But just a normal kid. Went to school, started going to the gym when I was a bit younger, and thought I'll post some videos on social media, and I did, and just kept doing it. And then now I'm here, 1 point something on TikTok. I mean, I don't really care too much about the followers, but just for saying for the podcast, built a following on social media. That's what I do now.
Yeah, so obviously you've built your personal brand, if I can call it that, around going to the gym and fitness. But I really want to take it back to the beginning and when you started. So can you tell us when, why, how did you get into the gym?
Really long story short, I mean, it could be one of those classic stories. I'm not going to say I had a different story from other people. I was a small kid. I hit puberty really late. And then I also had the external factors of feeling, I wouldn't say bullied, but like I was so considerably like smaller than everyone else in my year group at school. All the boys were pretty manly. I just thought, you know what, let me start doing push-ups and pull-ups in my bedroom on the floor. I had a little pull-up bar in my doorway. Before that, I did do gymnastics, so I kind of knew what I was doing when I started.
Right.
So I just did that kind of trial and error. Didn't really focus on diet or anything like that. I was literally just being as quiet as I could at midnight, doing push-ups on the floor.
What age is this?
15. Like my mum would say goodnight to me, and then I would pretend to get in bed. I don't know why I was hiding it from my parents. I don't know. It was kind of like a little embarrassing thing. I'd pretend to say goodnight, pretend to get in bed, turn my light off, wait for everyone else to go to sleep, and then get down on the floor and do push-ups. I'm not even kidding. Like, it actually sounds like a really weird
I know,
thing.
because most kids would do that, but then they'd stay up and play video games or stay up on their phone.
Yeah.
And you're doing push-ups and pull-ups.
Well, we can get onto that sort of thing later in, but like I never played video games. Like, I had an Xbox 360, still got it. That's all I ever had. Never went up to Xbox One, I think it was, or PS5. I never played video games. Short story, because my Wi-Fi was too slow. So like, I never played video games online with friends. I just did that in my free time. I was always on the trampoline in the garden. I'm lucky to have like a decent sized garden. We live in the forest. So I was always on the trampoline, you know, playing tennis in the garden with my brother, playing golf, cricket, everything like that. So I was pretty active as a child. And then I sort of translated that onto now.
Yeah, because that's something I really wanted to pick up on. Is obviously I've watched a lot of your content and I've seen the transformation videos from clips of when you were younger to now. And one in particular I noted was the clips of you as a teenager. The caption was, "This fitness thing won't work out, you're too skinny." And then clip to now, and it was like, what the F do you mean? And I understand this type of content probably does quite well on social media because people love seeing a transformation. They love an underdog. But what's kind of the reality behind those videos from your personal experience?
In terms of having like that first original quote,
yeah,
saying it wouldn't
was
work
that
out?
an insecurity for you when you were younger?
I mean, I never had the dream of doing like a fitness social media when I was younger. When I started, like, that was not in my head. That only came about when I actually started like posting on TikTok and stuff. So I suppose the fitness thing itself, not the social media, was like, will this even work out? Will doing all this gymming help you?
Did you get those comments from people, or was it more something you were thinking about yourself?
Probably more myself, to be honest. Yeah. So you could sort of say that the videos were more like voices in my head.
Your internal
critic.
critic.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I definitely remember having some external, like, people saying stuff, but it was never really like, oh, it's not going to work out and this, that, and the other. It was different comments. Like I remember one girl, I remember at the start of my TikTok, I posted like what I thought was a really wholesome, like motivational thing. It was a video of me doing tricep push downs in the gym, and there was some cool music behind it. And the quote was like, your body is the canvas, your like mind is something, and then like paint it, right? So you're working on yourself. That was the whole point of the TikTok, to say like, you know, you are you and you can work on yourself. And she just, how's language on this? Like, she took the piss.
Right.
Can I swear
I think
on this?
piss is okay.
Okay, took the piss, and like that knocked me seriously. 'Cause I was just like, unnecessary. But I'm just glad I never really let it get to me. But yeah, so internal voices mostly, but there was obviously some external sources of hate.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I guess it's to be expected, because not everybody is going to understand the reasons behind what you're doing. And it is a shame, I guess, that not everyone's going to be super encouraging, but it's good that you don't let it get to you. And in a way, it's then a driving force to like prove those people wrong. So just moving on from that then, when did you start creating fitness content, gym content for social media? Because I'd also like to talk about when you dropped out of uni, but I'm just trying to work out the timeline in my head of when you dropped out of uni. Were you already doing the content then?
Yeah.
Or did that come later?
Yeah, I can give you a full timeline. So
Perfect.
leave school, March 2020, COVID, right? So I was in sixth form, about to do my A-levels, COVID hit. We left school thinking, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and then we just never went back. So that was my first like alone time, right? And we can say like I was always kind of shaped by everyone around me at school. I went to a private school, so everyone was very, you know, follow the road, you know? So, but everyone always knew I was kind of different. I never really fit in terms of education. Like, I didn't really want to do that. I had some learning difficulties, everything like that. So when lockdown hit and I was home alone, well, I had my family there, but when I was just home and didn't have the sort of like anyone else to tell me what to do, what not to do, I was like, you know what? And I'd actually been hating on TikTok the whole of school, like the whole of that year that TikTok came out in 2020, or when did it come out? Like 2018
it was,
or something?
Yeah, it moved from kind of musically styled to TikTok, I think, 2019, 2020.
Yeah. So
when it really blew up.
I hated on it just because everyone else hated on it. And then when lockdown hit and I had no external, like, you know, what's the word for that? Like influence, like no one was influencing me to do something or say something. So I could sort of be my own person. So I downloaded TikTok and I actually posted a couple of videos and I just had a lot of fun with it. Like literally like the trending videos to trending sounds, nothing to do with fitness, nothing to do with, I was never trying to be. I'm not a dancer, so I didn't do any dances, but I did some funny skits and stuff like that. And one skit was how men secretly flex. I actually saw a guy post his own version and I was just like, well, TikTok is pretty much you take inspiration from people, then do it. So I picked the same sound he used and I just made my own version of it. And then that one blew. So I was like, right, this is crazy. I'm famous. it got like 2.1 million views. But that was the first time anything like that ever happened to me. So I was like, you know what? Let me make a part 2 and then a part 3 and then a part 4. And there was a good space in between them all. I didn't do them the consecutive days. But in between doing all those videos, which every one of them blew, I did other videos. And since that first one happened to be a skit about flexing muscles, I thought, right, let me do some more about muscles. I'd already been going to the gym at that point. Like I started the gym when I was like 15. I was doing the push-ups and pull-ups 15. Started the gym 16 in my school gym. So I had some muscle, nothing crazy. But so I made the secretly flex videos because they were relatable. Like I'd definitely done that at some point. You know, the classic drinking water while tensing your bicep on the phone. So in between those like 4 parts, I was doing other videos of a little bit about muscle, other sort of similar things. I was still just having fun with it at that point. Never once thought like, oh, let me try and do this for a career. And yeah, then I decided to do a gap year because I didn't get the grades from my fake A-levels that we didn't even do.
Yeah.
I didn't really get the grades I wanted. So
you were the year that it was just all
scrambled.
Algorithmically done, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a hit. That was the first time in my life I thought I'd ever had like where I really thought was unfair.
Sure.
Like, everything else I was like, you know, I'd never.
You put the work in, you
Yeah.
get the reward, but you didn't even get that.
Yeah. So I woke up on the morning thinking, oh, my grades are going to be sweet. Like, you know, predicted grades from teachers. But it wasn't the predicted grades from the teachers. It was put into an algorithm to do with what students got in previous years. So I woke up with an E in biology, right? And I was a fairly smart kid with biology. Like, I was probably one of the worst in my class, but like still good at it. But an E was not right. So I was just shocked. And then they actually did a little U-turn with the algorithm, so I went back to a normal grade. But it meant that I didn't get into my first choice of university, which was the London School of Economics. The reason that was my first choice for university, completely honestly, is because I was just following my brother's footsteps. My brother's like academically gifted, far more academically gifted than I am. So I can actually say that that alone probably led me to be where I am. Like, obviously things along the way, but that was the first start where I was really faced with something like, what do I do now? Because I didn't want to go into my insurance. So I decided to take a gap year, and then all I could do was go to the gym and make TikToks because I couldn't travel.
Yeah. It's so funny how at that moment in time, getting the A-level results and not getting into your first choice probably felt like quite a big setback for you. And you're thinking, what am I going to do now? Whereas actually, if you reflect on it, it probably was the best thing that could have happened.
Exactly. But in the moment, I did not know that at all.
Yeah. But you did then go off to uni, right? So you went to Loughborough.
Yeah. So after my gap year, which probably the worst year of my life, like I was just home alone. All my friends went to uni, all my school friends went to uni straight away. So I had literally no friends. So I was home, like I'd never felt so lonely, this, that, and the other. So all I was doing was making TikToks, spending time with my dad, and being in the house. That was it. Eat, sleep, train, repeat. And then I decided to go to uni, Loughborough Uni, after I went to visit one of my friends at the uni during my gap year. I went to visit my best friend and instantly fell in love with it. Like the whole campus vibe, everything, like all the people there were really lovely.
The gyms.
Yeah. So I literally applied to it on that basis. I didn't think about the course. I just thought, what do I want to do for the next 3 years? And like, that was it. Obviously still had the social media thing in mind at this point. I was thinking, let me try and continue to build a following, because by the time I went to uni, I think I was on 380,000 followers on TikTok.
Wow.
So, you know, in my head, that was really big. So I was like, yeah, let me do this social media, do the uni. I can do both, surely. I was wrong. But yeah, so I went to uni, had some fun, really had some low points as well in my first year.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that because I know that you dropped out, but what was life like leading up to that point? What made you choose to leave in the end?
What made me choose to leave in the end was just I was so set. I had convinced myself, like, there's no way I will be able to stay here for 3 years. Like, it's either I leave or something bad happens. Like, we'll get into it though. Like, the first day I went to uni, really lovely sunny day. Met some lovely people. Met my flatmates. I loved all my flatmates. We really got on. But I remember walking into this was crazy. This was like the second or third time I'd actually ever been like in a public space since having a following on social media, because I was, you know, in a shelter. I was
Lockdown.
under my roof. So I was at home alone building a following. Everyone was seeing me through their screens. I was still a normal kid in my head. Still am. But like, you know, I didn't think anyone knew me. Then I went to Reading Festival just before university. That was my first time when I was like, oh my God, because I walked through those doors and got instantly recognized by a whole group of people, and they've got a picture with me. I was just like, what's going on? That was the first picture I'd ever taken with someone. So, and then that continued in Reading Festival. Anyway, to uni, I walk into the courtyard, everyone's there meeting each other, and word had already got round that like, oh, there's a TikToker.
That must be really surreal.
Well, yeah, but it didn't work in my favor, because TikTok in that uni setting with the people that were in that courtyard was still a weird thing. So it wasn't, oh yeah, there's like a good TikToker here. It was like, there's a TikTok guy here.
I see.
Yeah?
Okay.
So instantly without saying a word, without doing anything, my first impression on everyone was bad. So people didn't like me from the get-go. Like I started meeting people. Obviously in uni you have your first club night is like the first night, right? So I go out.
Week.
Yeah, it was Freshers Week. I go out and this first night I'm getting like hassled in a bad way. Like people are like screaming words across the club, saying not nice words. I'm not going to say those on the podcast, but I was all right. Like it wasn't actually affecting me, but it was a bit like, whoa,
Not
first
what you
day at
expected.
uni. I haven't done anything to these people. Some people would come up to me and like say stuff like that. And I would go, sorry, what's your name? Like I didn't know them. They
Yeah.
knew me. I
Yeah.
didn't know
Well,
them.
they thought they knew you.
Yeah. So it was off to a bad start already, but I was kind of pushing that to the side. I had my flatmates. Everything was good. But then throughout the year, that did still continue. I managed to be like with a lot of the people that judged me at first. I actually managed to be pals with them at the end because like I remember a couple lads came up to me one time. This was a good like few months in now because I'd always just pushed it away, like ignored it. But they came up to me and they were like, "Hey James, how you doing?" And it was like they were trying. I knew it wasn't actually a nice conversation. They were trying to antagonize me or whatever. But I just killed them with kindness straight away. I was like, "I'm good, mate. How are you?" Like, and literally had a conversation. And then from one of my flatmates who was friends with them as well, they go back to that flatmate and go, "James is actually a sound lad, you know." And then it was only then that that whole group of people were like, "He's actually not bad."
Mm.
But you know, it wasn't a great first few months. I've got some really funny stories. And it wasn't great for my parents either because I remember getting drunk one time and accidentally calling my parents rather than my friend. And I was in a drunk mess like state. So they were obviously a little bit worried as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
So all of this is happening. Obviously, it's first few months that aren't exactly what you'd expected. When you decided you had to leave, what were the emotions that were going through your head then?
I'd never made a big decision like it before in terms of that. Like I remember in school I wanted to leave at 16 just because I didn't like school.
Yeah.
But I carried on. My parents weren't controlling of my life, but like I carried on the way they wanted me to, you know. School, sixth form, uni. So I'd never really made a big, and also my school was all one. It wasn't like I had to switch to a different sixth form. My high school was also a sixth form as well, so I stayed in it. So I was always in my comfort zone, really. It wasn't really my comfort zone, but it was my parents' comfort zone. So stepping out, making the decision to just completely like change the way I'm going was, I wouldn't say scary because I was so set on it. Like it would have been scarier for me to stay at uni. Like I couldn't stay there. I was getting really low to do with studies and to do with knowing that I didn't want to do that. Like continuing to do something you know you're not good at, built for, and you don't like. Like it's a no-brainer to get out of that situation.
That's really good advice, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Williamson talks about this idea of when people are in okay, mediocre situations, that's where they get stuck because you kind of get comfortable in that complacency. And for example, someone who's in a bad relationship, but it's okay and they treat them nicely and they take them out for dinners, or someone in a job and their boss is a bit annoying, but the pay is all right. Those type of people would be better off if their situations were worse because it would be the catalyst that they needed to then
I think
change.
I've seen that podcast.
Yeah. It really stuck with me because I thought it sounds really counterintuitive, but actually it's so right. And for you, there wasn't an option to stay at that point. I'm guessing you had to get out.
Yeah. So it was a no-brainer for me. I felt sad. I remember being in a lecture one time and the sunk cost fallacy came up. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard James Smith talk about it.
Oh, really? So I'd actually heard it in an economic term where like, you know, you don't want to, you continue doing something because of the prior investment to it in terms of money. But so I was in a lecture and that came up because I was doing geography and there was economic sides of geography. So that came up and I instantly heard that and started thinking about it for me, not about money investment, but just about time and effort and, you know, emotion. Like I thought to myself, if I stay at uni, all I'll be doing is continue to do it because I've done it my whole life, like school and everything like that. And that would be the only reason I stay in uni. So I thought that's one thing. I remember putting on my Instagram story, because I had an Instagram following at this point. I remember saying, are any of you familiar with the sunk cost fallacy? And everyone replied saying it, and I was just like, right, like maybe this is something I need to think about. But on your point that you brought up with Chris Williamson, I actually kind of came up with my own thing. Me and my brother were having a deep chat. We were on holiday recently, and my brother is, as I said, more academically gifted than I am. So he's now going into like the corporate world and everything like that. And it's tough for my brother because I'm the younger brother. He's been the star. It's never really been this way, but in my head, he's been the star child our whole lives, like getting better grades than me, better prospect, everything like that. And he's now gone into, his line of work, banking or something like that. And then he's seeing me doing what I want to do, going on holiday whenever I want. I'm waking up at a reasonable time in the day, not 6 a.m. in the morning. So we were having a chat about this, being like, oh, it's a bit crazy, isn't it, how the tables have turned? And I suddenly came out and said, you were too smart to dream. In the same way that, like, too smart being good enough where he can stay in uni and then go on to this corporate role and everything like that, that he didn't bother dreaming about being anything bigger, like way bigger. And that really stuck with him. And he brought it up a few weeks later, and I was like, oh, that's crazy that you remember that. Because I didn't really realize it would stick with him, but he was definitely thinking about it for a while. And
yeah.
I think he's still thinking about it, but,
That's so interesting because, I think there's probably people listening to this who are in similar situations to your brother, and because they've, done really well academically, they've been able to get the good jobs that I guess they thought would make them happy and it would be the right thing for them. Whereas for someone like yourself who wasn't really enjoying the whole uni thing, maybe struggled a little bit academically, you're kind of looking for something else that you can then like put your passions in. It's almost like that square peg round hole thing. Mm-hmm. Like, because you didn't quite fit in there, you're like, okay, I need to kind of create something else for myself. So after you left uni then and you're doing social media and creating content, was there a point where you realized that you could then turn that into a career?
There was a point where I realized I wanted to try. I still now, I mean, I'm a bit further, but still now I doubt myself like anyone would. But the point I realized I wanted to try was when I had a chat with my dad about leaving uni, and I was like, right, I'm just going to go for this. I can't stay in uni. What else am I going to do? This. So that was the point I realized I wanted to try. So I started coaching, which was like a, very hands-on approach to being able to pay the bills and everything. I wouldn't say coaching was the absolute dream though. Just got to be able to earn money to pay the bills and, go on holiday when I want, things like that. When I realized I could seriously turn it into a career, or at least what I want to do for the next few years, is when Gymshark approached me and said, we want you to be an athlete. Because that was, I'd been working pretty much for free. It was never about the money, but I've been working for free for like 2 years doing social media with no reward in uni, before uni. And then suddenly for something to come at me, it felt like I'd put no effort into it because I wasn't thinking about the fact that I'd previously, built this whole brand for 2 years without any reward. So I was like, that's what that does. Just constantly doing the same thing over and over again, not really expecting much, just doing it because you enjoy it, and then something comes in a week.
And clearly Gymshark as a brand recognised that and thought they've seen the work that you've been putting into creating content. Something I wanted to ask you, because you brought it up in a previous podcast, is why you? What do you attribute your success to? And I think it's a really hard question to answer because it, requires a certain level of confidence, which we don't always have. And it was sweet in the podcast. You mentioned how before you became a Gymshark athlete, you were looking at Anna and Nathaniel, who are Gymshark athletes, and you were thinking they have something special that I don't. Now you've kind of been working with the brand for a while, and you've been to the lift events and you've been to these meetups. Do you see yourself as someone special?
I always asked, like, myself and even my Gymshark manager and everyone, like, why me?
Yeah.
I actually did. And they always gave me answers, but, you know, the answers were never, that never suddenly flipped a switch in my brain and went, oh, yeah, that's it. Because I don't think you can have someone else tell you. I think it needs to be your own realization. I now believe it myself because, well, I suppose it's over time. Like, I've been with Gymshark for nearly a year. I've gone to their events and met all these people. And, like, so the combined, everyone telling me, I still don't believe in myself, but everyone's saying, oh, you're my idol and this, that, and the other at the events. That's always just slowly pushing me further into, you know, believing in myself. But I suppose what was the word you used? Attribute.
What do you attribute your success to? Yeah.
What I attribute my success to is I've always had these differences, but I realized them, I knew them, but I never allowed them to actually propel me forwards. I always thought they were holding me back, right? In school, because I was placed in a setting where those differences were bad. But then when I left uni, where I was still being held back from these things, I was really struggling to do my essays, my listening lectures. Like I was leaving lectures halfway through because I was just getting fed up. But when I finally allowed myself to put myself in a position where I can actually use these differences to propel myself forward, that's where everything just started going up. So the success, I will say, comes from actually me being different from the people I grew up with, you know, struggling with reading, writing, being slower with processing. But I've always been more creative. I was literally texting a school friend of mine today. It was his birthday the other day, and I haven't spoken to him since I left school. But I remembered it was his birthday. I always had the date in mind. And he said, oh, it's really cool to see what you're doing now and everything. And he mentioned Casey Neistat. He's a vlogger from YouTube. Like he probably popped off like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was obsessed with him in school. And it was just cool to see that my friend had remembered that, and he's like a creative filmmaker type vlogger. And my friend said, like, as soon as I saw you being obsessed with him, I always knew something would come of that. So it was the point where I left uni and allowed myself to put myself in that position to sort of flourish.
I love that so much, and I think that is such a great message to people because, like you said, it's so easy to look at your differences or even flaws, if you want to call them that, and think that that's going to hold you back, whereas actually they could be an advantage. And that weird thing about you and that obsession that you have with like vloggers or something, that could turn into something amazing if you allow it to. And really inspirational.
Looking back, it seems so stupid to try and push yourself.
Of course.
To do something that you know you're not actually
You're going against the grain in that sense if you try and do that. So I want to get on to the fitness side a little bit because, as I said at the beginning, that's clearly what you've built your brand around. I know that you've got your online coaching business as well. And something I've been asking a few people is, where do you think most people go wrong when they're starting out on a fitness journey? I had a friend message me when he knew I was going to be having these conversations, and he said, can you ask someone how I can get motivated, how I can get started, because I've been to the gym a few times, but I've just not stuck with it. If you had to kind of coach that person, what would your advice be?
If they've been to the gym a few times, if they've not stuck with it because they don't like it, then I mean, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about. If you really know you don't like it, then maybe the gym isn't for you. But there's other ways of exercising, whether you want to lose weight or even gain weight or build muscle. Like, you don't have to go to the gym to build muscle. There's other ways. So try all the different ways, and do it gradually. You know, a lot of people go, oh yeah, I went to the gym like 4 times last week, but now this week I just don't want to. Well, that's probably because you went 4 times last week. Maybe just go once and then twice and then 3 times, you know, over a period of months even. So yeah, slow and steady, gradually doing things. If you really don't like the gym, there's other things. Try out running, there's this new high rocks trend going on right now. Calisthenics, that's even how I started because that transferred over from gymnastics. I like the gym, so I go to the gym. I don't actually force myself to go to the gym all the time. Like I do sometimes, everyone has off days, but I like the gym. Everyone's like, how do you stay motivated? Well, I like it.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you're not going to stay motivated to do it. Find something you like. I genuinely believe there is some sort of activity that everyone would enjoy. It doesn't have to just be the gym. The gym is just most accessible to people. There's so many gyms now. So that's why most people go to the gym. But there's so many other things you can do.
Yeah. And I think it's easy for people who aren't in a routine with the gym to look at fitness influencers like yourself and think, oh, that's what I have to do. Yeah. But it's not necessarily. It's about what you enjoy and something that you can be consistent with as well.
Yeah.
I'm kind of rattling through these questions because we're going to run out of time. But obviously you're in very good shape physically. I wanted to ask you, are you happy with your physique? Are you proud of what you've built?
Yeah. And that's a rare answer, actually. I think a lot of my friends would probably say, like, I'm happy but never satisfied. I'm kind of satisfied. Like, obviously, I've managed to get myself out of the tunnel vision. A lot of people go to the gym and then, you know, they'll look at someone and be like, all right, I want to be like him. But then when they get to him, they want to be like the bigger guy and then the bigger guy. And it's a continuous cycle. And that's why people end up doing things that will harm their body. I also used to want to look like these big, muscular, scary men. But I've kind of got it in, like, I kind of got out of that. I just snapped out of it one day when I realized to 99% of the population, and I know we're not doing it for other people, but there is always an element of that. It's not, my grandma wouldn't want to look at me being a really huge, muscly, veiny, like scary, looking like I'm on loads of steroids.
Mr. Olympia kind of physique.
Yeah, and nor would my future wife, my kids, my parents.
Crush the babies.
Yeah, like, I mean it in no disrespect. I can really appreciate the work that people put in, right? And I've got friends that are pushing for actual bodybuilding shows, you know, not natural bodybuilding shows either. Like, they openly hit the drugs to, you know, achieve the physique they want, and that's fine by them. But I can look at that and know that that is not what I want to look like. Like, I think that's not attractive. And you're also putting yourself at risk. Like, you are struggling to walk upstairs without running out of breath, you know? So I'm happy and satisfied. The only thing I wouldn't be satisfied with is I always want to be progressing, purely because otherwise going to the gym seems a bit pointless, right? It's enjoyable to be in the gym, but half of the enjoyment comes from knowing you're actually progressing. So I want to continuously progress, but I don't want to get to silly standards. You know?
Yeah. I'm really happy to hear you say that. I didn't think your answer was going to be yes, because I did a podcast recently with a body image researcher called Michelle Carroll. She was super interesting, and we spoke about muscle dysmorphia in men, and I think it's something that people don't really talk about, because if you see a guy in incredible shape, you just assume that he loves his physique, whereas kind of what you touched on earlier, people kind of pin their happiness and their self-worth on looking a certain type of way. And I think it can be a kind of a downward spiral, because you might start out in the gym and think, I'll be happier when I build muscle. And then you build muscle, and then you want to get bigger arms, and you're focusing on the striations in your shoulders, and you become so hypercritical of how you look that you're almost placing so much emphasis on it. You end up being dissatisfied. Have you?
I mean, I've
guess
been
you've
there.
seen that.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I recently went to LA and I was really tanned at the end of it, and then once that tans fade, like I'm not happy with that, because for some reason the tan just makes your physique look way better. But I mean, that's to be expected, you know. I feel like I looked my absolute best in LA with tan, and also I was really lean. We did it on purpose just to be as lean as possible for the videos and whatever. It's LA. And now that I've come back, I've allowed myself to not be as lean. I've eaten more. My tan's faded. My body hair's growing back. Like, you know, but that's to be expected. I know I can go back to that stage if I wanted to, but right now I don't want to.
Yeah.
Winter's coming, like, you know. Also, that wasn't a good stage for me because I wasn't progressing well at all in the gym. I was actually like regressing really badly. And I was actually, do you know who David Lade is?
Of course. I've met him.
Oh, really?
Like a Gymshark event in like 2018.
Yeah, you would. Anyone would love. I wish everyone could have a really long conversation with David Lade because at first he could seem pretty bland.
I heard him on Chris Williamson. He's so intelligent as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
So him and I, obviously, we've had our time together. We can have long conversations, and this is about the progression and regression thing. We were in the car in an Uber, and we were trying to figure out what I'm motivated by, and my motivation is far more about the fear of regression than it is progression. I would hate to go backwards, and this was with anything, the gym, financially. Like, if, say, the number in my bank account next month is lower than what it was this month, that is motivating me to make it in 2 months' time go way higher, you know? And the same with the gym. Like, I continue going to the gym every week purely to make sure I'm not losing what I've gained more than actually progressing. That's really what motivates me the most.
Yeah, I think you spoke about that in a recent YouTube video. And I think it is really interesting because, yeah, you want to keep driving forward and you want to keep pushing yourself, but you have to kind of stop and think, where is that drive coming from?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if it's something you can relate to, but for myself, I think I am someone who's ambitious and I'm driven, but I'm also scared of it not working out. And so that feeling of insufficiency, but also wanting to progress, is quite a toxic brew because you're being driven by something, but the fuel is quite potent.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
And you kind of have to accept it. Like, it's a good way to be in the long run, but you can have short-term bursts of not believing in yourself, even like sad and little depressive phases. I definitely struggle myself with that because it leads to me comparing myself with other people a hell of a lot, people in the same boat as me. And we all go through our phases, say it's social media, right? And for views, all of us go through different phases of having high views and low views, high views and low views. And when I'm on a high, I'm not really appreciating it that much because I'm thinking about getting it higher. But then when I'm on a low, I then look at someone else's account who might be on their high. Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
It's that negativity bias. I think we're all wired that way. Yeah. And I'd love to know why, because I think it's so harmful sometimes. But there's so much I want to get onto. Like, my brain is just spinning with questions. But we are running out of time. And something you said in a YouTube video as well, it might have even been the same one, is that complacency is your biggest fear. What do you mean by that?
I've seen, that's one because I've seen with some of my friends, I've seen people get complacent and it's...
And I think it would be easy to when you get to your level, as in the amount of followers you have, the work that you're doing. Like, I get it.
Yeah. I'd say that fear comes mostly from seeing other people get complacent and it affects them. I mean, it would also be a shame to get complacent when it was such a big dream of mine 2 years ago to be in this position, you know? So it's a big fear of disappointing my younger self. Also, like, I've left uni, I've made this huge, sacrifice to try and build the life I want, and to get complacent and just, half-ass everything, it would be a shame.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I mean, this kind of moves on to like relationships and stuff and friendships. But like, so I've seen it happen where someone will get a girlfriend and then they'll get a little bit complacent with work, and then
Let things slip.
everything slips because then they get worried about their work not doing well. So then they're like, oh, should I be doing this? And then everything just goes, you know. That's something I'm really scared of, really trying to figure out. But like, I've kind of pushed away any sort of potential relationship ever since I've started this.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
I think sometimes you need those reminders of how far you've come to kind of keep pushing you forward. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know why, but during lockdown, I moved back home, small town, so I just go for walks around the river and stuff. And somebody was writing messages in chalk on the pavement, like throughout the whole town. It was a really sweet sentiment. And I was on a walk one day, and I just looked down, and there was a message that said, "Look how far you've come," literally written in chalk on the pavement. I just stopped and I sobbed because I was in lockdown. I was feeling really low and I wasn't really doing much. And then I just needed that reminder to say, you're doing okay. Like, this is a shit time, but look how far you've come. And so it's almost a metaphor for like, sometimes you just need to stop and think and appreciate where you're at.
Yeah.
To not get complacent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just to round this up then, I'm asking my guests all the same question. This is the Personal Best podcast, after all. What is one piece of advice or a quote you'd like to share to help people achieve their personal best in any capacity?
There's one piece of advice. I've probably developed this through this podcast. I always think of things like, as we're going, definitely allow yourself to let your flaws propel you forwards, you know? If you're good at something and bad at others, why are you trying to be better at the things you're bad at and not focusing on the things you're really good at? So focus on the things you're really good at, and then maybe later you can try and fix the things you're bad at.
That's so brilliant. Yeah, Jimmy Carr said in an episode, he was talking about school, and he said, we don't need more shit physicists. Like, why are you trying to get kids who are on an E in physics up to an A? Because the world does not need more people who are shit at physics.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think it's such an important message. I just wanted to share one quote that I read on your YouTube channel because I think it was really sweet, and sometimes it's nice to hear these things. Someone had commented, it was really exotic muffin is the username. And they said, you're definitely one of the best influencer inspirations going at the moment. Down to earth and just says it how it is. Keep up the good work and everything is going to work out just how you want. And I love that, and I wholeheartedly agree. I mentioned in this podcast before how I think the online world of health and fitness is so confusing sometimes and quite overwhelming. And I have been following your content for a while, and I think you take up a really positive corner of the internet, and I just hope that grows and grows for you. Honestly, I really do.
Yeah, that's really kind of you. Thank you.
Perfect. Where can people go if they want to follow you, if they're not already?
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, James Beardwell. I'm sure if you type it, it comes up. There's underscores somewhere. Just type James Beardwell, beard, facial hair, and then well.
Gymshark code?
James.
Just James.
James. Simple.
Perfect. You guys can get 10% off. Is that right?
Yeah, 10% off.
Amazing.
James. Thank you very much.
Thank you.